Welcome to episode 265 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is co-host Scott Wright from the great country of Canada, who has jointly worked with the United States to shoot down UFOs, which are protecting us from the alien and Chinese spy balloon threat.
There you go. Happy to be part of that whole conspiracy.
Thank God for Canada. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Yeah, we got some questions here, though,
We all have a few questions, Scott. I mean, if they're not UFOs, of the alien or extraterrestrial type, how come the U.S. government isn't being forthright about that? Because they're not saying they're balloons.
Yeah.
That's already been confirmed. If they're not balloons, then what are they?
Well, my theory on it is that, the intelligence community never likes to get caught off guard. And so, I mean, if some foreign state comes up with some new technology and it becomes sort of publicly visible, you don't want to say, well, we don't know what that is. Or we don't want to say, we think it's China doing this stuff without proper attribution. So
what's interesting, though, is, I mean, the government did in the U.S. here. They did come forward. That was last year, and remember they released those videos from the fighter pilots of like the Tic Tac and these other things that they're like going to the public and saying we don't know what these are. So I find it interesting, but yet they haven't released the video of these objects that they shot out of the sky recently. So,
but there's no reporting that they were moving at supersonic speeds or doing weird things, right? So
just they couldn't identify how they were being the propulsion system, apparently. So well, you heard it here first, folks. We're gonna keep everyone updated on this breaking situation.
Yeah, we need a flash banner, a splash thing like CNN used to have. Breaking news.
That's right.
Every story was breaking news.
But there isn't much of a cybersecurity angle to that, at least not yet. But
my first thought on it was there's a book, I can't remember who the author was, a novel not too long ago called 1 Second After, and it's all based on the theory of electromagnetic pulse EMP attacks, right, where they explode a nuclear device in high atmosphere, and it basically knocks out all solid state electronics. And in the novel, it's kind of funny because everything dies except for some old Volkswagen Beetles and an old warplane that was, for air shows, kind of makes sense.
Of course. Well, we don't have Kevin today. So Kevin is on an airplane, and I'm giving him some crap because, airplanes have Wi-Fi these days. So there's really no excuse.
Why couldn't you do your podcast from
why not?
Seat 39A?
Exactly. No, Kevin must be in first class because he's a classy guy. But
I forgot that.
Yeah, that's right. But we will have him again next week. But in the meantime, we do have some stories this week to talk about. And first, Reddit, the big social network, suffered a pretty big security breach that got a lot of attention. So they were actually a victim of a phishing attack that was targeting their employees, which resulted in this attacker gaining access to internal documents, code, and some other types of business systems. What's interesting is that a single employee's credentials were compromised, but then the affected employee actually self-reported that they were a victim of this.
Yeah.
So... And of course, we'll link the article and of course the Reddit post about this. But they essentially used a fake page to steal credentials and the two-factor authentication codes. Very similar playbook like we normally see with these attacks. But to me, the thing that stands out is that the employee actually reported this
to
the company.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to be able to prevent 100%, employees doing the wrong thing. And it's not that employees, I got in this debate on LinkedIn on a post, that I did saying, employees are not the weakest link. I mean, you may think of them that way and it's easy to think of them that way, but it's really a matter of, they are the biggest target. and they're the most flexible and powerful, communication or computing device that we have, and they can be tricked. And so any layer of security can be bypassed at some point. And so when they said in their article that, well, we all know humans are the weakest link, kind of set off a bunch of people.
Yeah. I don't like that. I don't like the way that we or some people in the community still do that. They blame the users, and I think that mentality is dated.
If you need to blame somebody, you got to blame management, because they haven't trained people. They haven't layered security.
That's a great point.
The post that I put out was basically saying, if humans are your weakest link, then you don't have layered security.
Right. Yeah, that's true. The other point I want to make too about the Reddit breach in particular that I was impressed with is I really liked how they were very forthcoming about what happened. They had a post, they did an AMA on Reddit where you could talk to, I'm not sure if it was their security team or somebody, but they were very open and transparent about what happened and what they're going to do in the future to improve their security. So in my eyes, this was definitely a great example of how to handle a security breach like this.
Yeah, for sure. And, we used to see things like that from LastPass. Unfortunately, they don't anymore.
Oh, well, yeah. And we've talked in depth about LastPass.
Don't need to go back there yet.
We're not going back there.
Employee awareness of cybersecurity threats is critical to your organization, but most employees are bored by traditional security awareness training. The vast majority of employees are much more engaged when training is gamified. ClickArmor is the first fully gamified security awareness platform that reduces employee vulnerability by 60%. These days, we can't avoid cyber threats. They're everywhere, and everyone is a target. Employees really need to get better at avoiding cyber threats like phishing and social engineering. Most security awareness training solutions aren't effective enough to really change behavior. ClickArmor uses a very different approach that employees love. We use proven gamification techniques with psychological drivers that keep employees motivated to learn and improve their skills. Rather than using controversial live phishing tests that anger many employees and provide unreliable metrics, ClickArmor's unique learning challenges help employees learn about cybersecurity in a fun, stress-free way that builds up their confidence. And our engaging simulated threat scenarios motivate employees to improve their skills in a safe and fun environment. Gamified simulators can also extend far beyond phishing scenarios to practice facing dangerous social engineering scams. Our weekly 3-minute challenges provide continuous reinforcement for employees. Motivating employees to participate willingly means higher assurance reporting for compliance and risk management. Simple integration with your employee directory means that deployment of ClickArmor is a snap, and single sign-on makes usage and ongoing management of ClickArmor easy. ClickArmor has been proven to provide better employee engagement, making IT managers' lives easier. If you're tired of ineffective awareness training that hurts your corporate culture, find out how to gamify your security awareness training experience to improve employee resilience with ClickArmor.
So our second story is, I thought it was a really interesting article about how to make sure you're not accidentally sharing your location when you're using different apps or when you're even using your web browser, even on your desktop, right?
Yeah.
And it was a good article, which we'll link in the show notes, that gets into specifically around Google account settings, because that seems to be one of the biggest offenders that we see out there, because Google tracks so much information about you in addition to your location history. And they have a really good guide of walking you through that. In fact, I was
just going to say there's an implied consent issue, right? I mean, when you start to use Google stuff, you have to kind of check a checkbox that sort of allows them to do whatever, they're going to do a lot of the time, or, at some point it's in the fine print. But that's something it shouldn't be, but it's on the user to understand what they need to do.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, and I was going to mention, I did a solo show at the beginning of the year on this exact
Yeah,
same
it was really good.
topic to with some new ways that are that can be used to prevent sharing your location and your private data. So we'll again link that video in the show notes for you in that podcast. But definitely a big
Yeah.
issue and something that everyone needs to be aware of. You just don't want to hand out your location like candy. Unless that is something that you in fact want to do for maybe a personal reason, or you got a business or something like that.
Sure. I mean, there's lots of legitimate reasons, and
of course,
but it's one more guide you're going to have to keep up to date, Tom, because all the UI
that's not
changes.
my guide.
No, okay.
I will just keep linking the video that I made until Google changes everything. Similar how Facebook did right back in the day, like every couple of months they would change. Oh, we're moving the privacy settings around.
Well, Tom, I'm referring to Tom's guide to Facebook privacy settings, right? You used to have a very elaborate, complete list of every setting that you could change, but then you had to update it every 3 months.
I did. It just got too much work to keep up with Facebook. So, and there's so many other guides out there nowadays, but I think I was proud to be one of the first. Actually.
You were the first. SpyLogic.
I don't know. I was the first. It was
SpyLogic.net.
That's right. That's right. My blog that I haven't updated in 10 plus years or more. I don't know. So if you would like a bit of history, you can go to my blog at spylogic.net.
Go back in time.
Yes, go back in time. So our last story, this one I just find funny but not funny all at the same time. So a developer has pleaded guilty to hacking his own company after pretending to investigate himself. Now, that is fascinating. So a former Ubiquiti, so that is a company, they make Wi-Fi routers and typically enterprise level type stuff. This gentleman named Nickolas Sharp, he's pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges as he was trying to extort almost $2 million worth of cryptocurrency from the company.
Yay.
So the guy was a senior developer who used his access to the network to orchestrate a security breach back in December of 2020, steal data, then pose as some anonymous hacker from the outside and attempted to extort the company for 50 Bitcoin, which translated about $2 million. The company did not pay this money, so he leaked some private data that he found, company data to the public. He was caught by the FBI for doing this, and now he faces 35 years in prison.
Yeah, doesn't pay to.
Crime doesn't pay.
Crime doesn't pay. Yeah.
No.
And if only they could use their skills for good instead of evil, right? The old.
Just like any hacker that goes to jail for committing a crime. I agree with you. This story in particular highlights kind of that insider threat that we've talked about on the show. It's more rare to have something of this significance.
It's quite elaborate. I mean, he must have thought it was foolproof, obviously, right? And
of course,
went to a lot of trouble to hide his tracks. But you don't know what forensic or surveillance technology might be used against you that could expose what you're doing. So you gotta be 100% sure.
Right. I mean, I always look at insider threats these days, like in a typical example. A lot of them are not always malicious. Like we've talked about, like accidental mistakes, like mistakes that people make, not intentionally, but they end up taking a system down or causing an outage or accidentally exposing information to the public. Right, misconfiguring a system, not malicious, but that's still considered an insider threat.
Yeah, right? The issue I have is that everybody has a different definition of what an insider threat is, and some include the accidentals, and some of them don't, and some of them may or may not even consider the fact that an insider may be under stress of extortion, or have other mental issues or addictions and things like that are just making it hard for them to to do the right thing. So, I mean, you have to consider, I think, all potential threat agents that are coming from somebody with access to be an insider threat.
Great point. Well, that's it. That's all the stories we have. We whipped through those pretty quickly.
We were very concise today.
And it is very concise. This is what happens when Kevin's not on the show.
Yeah. Well, I'm recovering from COVID, so didn't have the energy to come up with a good aware much segment. And, we like to save those for when Kevin will fall off his chair laughing every time Tom says it. So
yeah. Well, first of all, we hope that you recover quickly from COVID.
So I think I'm getting there. So
hope you feel better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, like I said, there have been no tangents that Kevin would normally do on this show. So that's why this episode may be a little bit shorter than a normal episode, but had a lot of fun, though, just diving through the news. And I think it was good. So awesome. Well, we will let everyone go. But thanks again, Scott, as always.
Thank you, Tom, as always.
And thank all of you for listening and supporting the podcast. It's much appreciated. If you have not subscribed to us on your favorite preferred podcast app of choice, we would much appreciate that subscription. So that way you're notified of episodes as they are released. And we would also appreciate subscribing on our YouTube channel. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that is our next milestone. So we would greatly appreciate a like and subscribe on the YouTube. But till next time, we will talk to you all again next week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.